these two posts, and you can see a sort of a triangular tuffet of grass in there with an old plastic post. They mark the spot where last year there was a plant, a particularly, well, I like it, plant. It's a lesser butterfly orchid, and it's one of my favourite in this pasture that has a lot of species in it that are interesting and good for health for the animals, an old hospital field we got on the farm. But I fenced it off carefully last year with a few hurdles around it to protect the butterfly orchid that was in there, and it was a mistake because some animal or other, some wild animal, made a beeline straight for it and snapped it off, and that was the end of it. But it had been around a little while before that happened, before I fenced it off, and I was really sad because that was the end of the plant, and it has not grown back. It hasn't come back here. It's not here anymore. But I've noticed this year something very interesting's happened, because across there, just a little way off, you'll find there, lurking in the grass, can you see that cream flower? There's another butterfly orchid. And the only way that could have got there, because these posts have remained in place all year round, is if the first orchid that then got snapped and killed, died basically, is that it's seeded across there just a little way off, and it's got kind of a legacy in that other one that's growing there. Now, a few days ago, I had another large birthday. Not a significant birthday, as in a large whole number, but just another one, another notch as the cog winds along, and it makes you wonder about your life and things, because naturally that's what we do. We're human beings, we do that. And just wandering out here this morning on this early morning walking dogs, beautiful day coming up, just walking along here, it just warmed my heart to see that the butterfly orchid I was concerned about, it had been snapped off and done away with last year. It hasn't been wiped out. It's left what you might call a legacy. Now, I guess for all of us, when we're contemplating the meaning of life and other deep matters, we look at our life and we say, well, what does this amount to? What does it come to? What contribution have I made? What difference have I made in the world? Am I just a bubble on a cosmic sea, man, waiting to pop? Or is there going to be some outcome and something to show for the life that I've been allowed to live? As human beings, we kind of look at the world and we see things that have been around a long time. Those oak trees over there, they've been around a very long time, longer than me probably. And these hills, they're pretty old. They've been around a long time. And we can contemplate ourselves and we think, well, we're pretty temporary. What's the point of this? What's the meaning of this? What will come of this? What's the product? What's it all about? Now, the Apostle Paul was a guy who lived a certain sort of life, a very, some would say a troubled life, but actually he was fine with it, and a changeable life, let's say that. And we see him reflecting to some extent on what the meaning of it all is, what the contribution of it all was. Even though he did a very great deal with his life and made a great deal of it, we see him thinking about that quite a bit. And he writes in fact to a younger guy, when Paul is himself in difficult circumstances himself. He writes to this younger guy who he's spent a lot of time and effort pouring his own life into. I guess many of us seek significance like that, whether it's, you know, passing on your best recipes, or whether it's showing the grandkids how to chop wood, or what, I don't know. But there are things like that. We get real benefit from pouring our understanding, our knowledge, perhaps stuff we've received from our parents and grandparents, into the next generation, don't we? Well, Paul's saying, I've poured my life into you, Timothy. And here's the key to kind of fruitfulness, really, to what you might call a lasting legacy. And he adds some rich things there in what he says to Timothy, warm things, you know. But the point that he's making, and it's in 2 Timothy 2:2, is this. He says, what you receive from me, commit that to reliable men who will also be able to teach others. And in doing that, you're passing on a message that will make changes in people's lives in the goodness of God that are going to last forever. What had Paul passed on to Timothy? He'd passed on the good news about Jesus, the good news about Jesus' death and resurrection, to deal with human weakness, frailty and wrongness, things we do that we mess up. And he'd done it in such a way that people could lay hold of that, turn from sin and trust Christ, and then live a Christian life, a wholesome, satisfying Christian life, regardless of its circumstances almost, in the way that Paul himself had modelled for Timothy and had passed on to him. That's what he'd received. That's what he'd passed on. And that's what Timothy would get a lasting legacy from doing himself. Committing to communicating the way of God, modelling it for the next generation, because in doing that, you do something that's going to last forever because of the effects that has on their life, that they benefit from Christ's death and resurrection to eternal life. So the word for the week this week centres around this thought really. What difference are we making? What's going to become of us? What's our legacy? What will we pass on? There are many things we can pass on that could be good and useful and helpful and may do something for the next generation. But Paul is writing to Timothy, do something that's going to last forever with your life, lad. What you received from me, pass it on to reliable men who themselves will be able to teach others. And in that way, you're going to spend your life doing something that's going to last forever. God bless you. Have a great week.